And oh my god. I'm resident of Collinwood, and then no, I'm not crazy yet, and that's my story, and I'm going to stick to it. Joining me is Susie, Don Schmidt, and Patrick McCray, author of the Dark Shadows Daybook and Dark Shadows Daybook About. We're here to discuss our top moments of Dark Shadows. Ladies first, Susie.
Okay, well, I have my little list here, and so my number we my number 5 episode, or is the First Color episode.
Ooh.
Episode 295. I'm gonna go with that one first, and that one was my favorite because I love how it opens up with Victoria and Burke at the Blue Whale, and they're looking at each other all lovey-dovey, and you think it's just the two of them, and then the camera goes over to Barnabas, and he looks like totally pissed off, and he's just looking at them pretending to drink. And then Maggie comes in and collapses, and everybody's like, oh my gosh. I mean, that was just such a great moment. I mean, it was just so perfect.
What a horrible night for Barnabas.
Yeah.
Exactly. He has to stare at Burke and Vicky, and then Maggie, walking piece of evidence, walks in, and another romantic failure.
I know.
It's like, God, I should never leave the house. Grubhub delivers booze now. I just should have stayed home. Billy was right.
And what was so great is when she comes to, they're asking her, like, how did you get here? And she says, oh, my friend Sarah. And it's like, Sarah, out of all the places she could have taken or led Maggie to, like, not to her house, not even to Collinwood, or she takes her to the Blue Whale, and I freaking love that.
It's familiar to Sarah. It's where I don't know. It's where she hangs out.
Yeah.
She's a very old woman.
Yeah.
See on the side, the Blue Whale sells those underage cocktails to the young girls. That's what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, so I like that one. That was my number 5. My number 4 is episode 473, which is the return of Angelique as Cassandra. And I think I've mentioned to you this before. I freaking love how Roger looks so proud to introduce her to everybody. He's got like this big smile on his face, introducing her as his wife. And then the absolute stunned expressions of Victoria, Barnabas, and Elizabeth. And I love that scene because they're all like dressed in dark clothing. And then here comes Cassandra with her crazy big eyes, that big ass smile, and she's like wearing this bright green outfit. I freaking love that. And I love the arguments that Elizabeth and Roger get into. Oh my gosh, it's like I freaking love that scene between the two of them. It reminds me of how true siblings would argue in a situation like that. So that's number 4. Number 3 is episode 838, which is a Quentin episode, the one where he is expecting to die on that night. And he's not supposed to leave the room. Count Pitofi tells him not to leave until after midnight. And it's, the episode with Beth and the poison. I freaking love that. It was so emotional. And Jameson, that confrontation that he had with Quentin was really, really like just perfect acting. So I love that. And Quentin's expression when he finds out that it's Beth that is the one who is gonna like murder him. So I love that episode. That was really good. So that's number 3. And then number 2 is episode 252, which is the introduction of Buzz Hackett. I know that everybody loves Buzz, and I freaking love that whole thing. How just the sound of the motorbike, them at the Blue Whale, totally drunk, the horror on Vicky's face and Joe Haskell's face. I freaking love that. And then when she takes Buzz back to Collinwood and him saying that he wants to like run his or drive his motorbike up and down the stairs, it cracks me up every time.
I tell you, if they had played their cards right, they would have kept Buzz around. Really, I mean, they really would have. And vaguely inexplicably, he would have taken Bill Malloy's job, because Bill was good at solving problems. And just imagine the sort of problems Bill had to solve, which had to do with a lot of, drunken sailors and things like that.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is set Buzz, who I think we'll find out is a Mormon, loose on those sea tramps, and it's good night, Charlie.
Yeah.
I really, Liz just inexplicably trusts him. A seance or something tells me to trust him. And he's a problem solver.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I should say about these episodes is that I don't necessarily think that they're the best Dark Shadows episodes, because for me, some of the best Dark Shadows episodes are the seance ones, but these are just my personal favorites. These are the ones that I watch over and over and over again, because they have like, I don't know, they're kind of comfort episodes for me. So they aren't like the best, but they're my favorites. And then my favorite episode, it's episode 213, which I kind of am doing 213 and 214, which is the episode where Burke apologizes to Carolyn for using her. I freaking love that episode. I think that that's like my most watched episode. I just love the conversation that they have when he apologizes to her, the music that's playing in the background, and him telling her, like, I wish that we were meeting for the very first time tonight. And it gives me chills. I love that.
Real man.
That goes into that goes into the next episode, which is where Roger meets Barnabas for the first time. It's just them being up in his, what is it? Is it his study or his office?
Yeah.
I love that just the whole interaction with the two of them, and how when he sees the ring, it looks like it almost takes Roger's breath away, when he notices the ring. It's just such a cool moment. And so those are my absolute favorite episodes.
If you notice in that episode, Roger calls it, this was the study Jeremiah Collins used. And Barnabas says Jeremiah would have liked this study. He doesn't confirm nor deny it. He just says, oh, he would have liked this. Which is like, how do you know?
Yeah.
Right. Go ahead, Patrick, then we'll do Dawn.
Okay. Susie, by the way, just great choices. I mean, just magnificent, spot on. And you're right to differentiate favorite from best or most important, because those are all, or scariest, those are all different things. Although maybe I have a smattering of all of them. In no order, except perhaps Dominican, Catholic humor for Jewel. Episode 508, which is Stokes mixing it up in the Dream Curse.
Yeah.
Because it's about time somebody handed these supernatural know-it-alls their lunch, and leave it to T. Elliot Shaft to get down with his badass self in the Dream Curse. And his heart beats a little faster at one point. I think he says, "Oh, my heart perhaps beat a little faster." And then he's hitting the Stilton and the Sherry, all in a day's work. So yeah, exactly. 1099, which is the mega apocalyptic episode. It is the core of Ragnarok. It's when everything changes, and Julia, God bless Grayson Hall and Julia Hoffman, she emerges as the hero she was always meant to be. She is alone, and there is no doubt in anyone's mind in 1840 that she's going to hand it its lunch. And after escaping zombies and, Barnabas, my God, how did he survive? We'll never know. And the Chuck Morgan, the fabulous, suspiciously well-fed zombie, chasing him around, throwing off that sheet off his head and so on. I love it when he gets the sheet on his head. It's just such a human moment. And just everything about that. It's the end of everything. Like the Widow Loman says, attention must be paid. Episode 634, and actually this episode and the one after it are kind of the same episode, but I love them both. And for a long time, I've tried to figure out how they're different and what function they serve, and I don't know. But it's episodes. I'll do them in reverse order. Episode 634, which is what I call "Smash the Machine," and it's when Barnabas. They're gonna try to bring Eve back to life, and Barnabas just says, "You know what?" and just smashes everything. Okay, he's gonna be a vampire again. Adam's gonna be mad and not pay the cable bill, or whatever is gonna go on. But Barnabas has had it, and it's also the episode where Barnabas goes all Whoopi Goldberg with a great big smile as Nicholas is engulfed in hellfire. And it's about damn time, because this show is so much about the bad guys just running circles around everyone else, making them miserable. And for once, someone says, so this machine is, all I need to do is, throw water on the witch. Here we go. Here we go. Drink up. So I love that. But then there's an episode before that shows the promise that Barnabas fulfills in that episode. And it's episode 479. And it's where, Lang says, okay, Barnabas, I'll help you out. All you have to do is cut Jeff Clark's face off. And then leaves the room. And Vicky comes in, and Barnabas, he's ready to murderize Jeff. But then Vicky comes in, and he hears how much she loves him. And he knows that won't be his, but his benevolence and his humanity just finally breaks out of all of the pain that's been heaped upon it by Angelique and everybody else. And he says, there's just a time to say no, enough, and that you're going to be better. And he sort of tries, but he doesn't really have the guts to follow through with it the way he should, until the episode 634, where he smashes the machine. So he kind of makes the realization, but then he puts it into practice in that episode. And those two together are so moving, and I love them. I love them dearly. And then episode 548. And when I was doing the second watch through, when I was writing the Collins Chronicles, which was a series of diaries that I did from the point of view of different characters per episode. And I had a very brilliant collaborator, sort of behind the scenes, a woman named Alexis Latshaw, who occasionally writes about Dark Shadows. And if you ever see any of her stuff, it's bloody brilliant. She is maybe one of my favorite people in the world. And she said, Patrick, pay attention to episode 548. And it was one I really hadn't thought of. And then I did. Holy free holies. It's the episode where Angelique, aged, impossibly aged, goes to Barnabas and she has no power. She has nothing, and just begs for his forgiveness. And Barnabas, in a move, I'm sure he was probably regretting as he did it, but he felt like he had to, as an 18th century dude, refused. He withheld forgiveness. And if Barnabas is doing penance for anything in the series, it's not shooting her. It's she's going to live. It's not It's not really any of that stuff. It's that moment. That is the moment where if he had just stepped outside of himself and looked at the real humanity that was going on and the opportunity that was put in front of him, he would have saved himself and the house decades of pain, probably would have saved Angelique's life, you know, from 1840, because different decisions would have been made. And I have a feeling that when he gets back after she's shot, and he gets back to an episode that we can't see, you know, which would be the episode after the speech at the Historical Society and all of that. We can't see it just because it's too horrible. It's too painful to countenance what Barnabas was going through that day. That conversation, probably of all the conversations Barnabas has had, I imagine is the one that was just ringing in his ears the loudest. And so that one really, that's a moment that's just really breathtaking for me. So there you go.
Don, what's yours?
Well, mine aren't going to be. They're just not going into like chronological order. So the first one, the episode 116, that'd be the death of Matthew. I guess I'd really pick the scare episodes, and we've gone through this really trying time with Vicky getting tied up in a hard and and if people don't remember, Matthew Morgan was sharpening an axe.
Yeah.
And it's also when you get the and Josette makes her forget. She says, don't cry, don't be afraid. And you know, Matthew Morgan is scared to death. And I don't know, it being in the old house and you have this black and white and the house is all dilapidated, there's just a scariness and a eeriness about that episode. And you feel so exhausted. Matthew Morgan lying on the floor. And I think Burke says, let's get out of here. Matthew Morgan left alone in the old house, dead. And next one would be episode 192, be the death of Laura Collins, and how Josette contacts Vicky, and how they do the camera work. What are you trying to tell me, Josette? Or where is he? And she's trying to figure out. And it's just the whole thing is, and she can't get in there. And there's, there's Laura, come into the fire, David, and just like in this trance, and she just can't get to him. And she just says, David, don't do it. And she says, you have to come here now. And somehow, she, disappears and knowing the lore behind that actress.
Diana Malay,
she was pregnant at the time. And one of the beams fell during sleeping. You don't see there, whatever. And she had a real maternal instinct. Felt very close to David and very motherly in real life. There's a lot of lore behind it and what they had to do, but it's just it was that whole crescendo to that, and it left really an impression on me when I saw it. So that's number 2, and then Patrick and Jewel. We talked about this, and that the favorite episode of mine, because it's been building up, was episode 461, which I think is the first episode that Dan Curtis directed, and it's when they're making the transition of Vicky going back to 1968. And one of the reasons why that whole episode impression on me, it's because it was about April of 2020. It had been on lockdown, and like everything, the whole world had stopped. There was a clock, grandfather clock in Collinwood, and Nancy Barrett, who gave one of my favorite narrations for the entire 5-year run. It was so well written, and its time has stopped at Collinwood, and I just went, whoa, wait a minute, what is this? I mean, here's Dark Shadows transcending itself. It's something that none of those writers would have ever known. And here I wasn't, and everything had stopped. And it was just how Dan Curtis directed. I think he was the only one that could direct that episode. He was so passionate about it. And how everybody was frozen, everybody was in the same position, and how, you know, they're at the gallows and they make the transition. And then, you know, when Jonathan Frid goes, "Who are you?" And like you guys have talked about it on the podcast, for the first time, he has lost control. And here's Barnabas, here's Julia, and whoop, and she's top dog, and he's really vulnerable. And it's the whole first, that, as you could tell, that made a huge impression on me. The next one would be episode 694, and for two reasons. So this is things, yeah, this is where things are really crescendoing in what I think the person's scariest arc, which is, I think that whole arc was so freaking scary like this when I'm watching it. But there's two things going on. How there, David, as Professor Stokes says, you guys have got to get out of this house immediately. All in danger, got to get out. I mean, when you hear Stokes going total blue, you know it's bad. And there's something that happened, something that maybe we all haven't really discussed on the podcast. Roger Collins early in the show had popped with Liz saying, did you ever hear things when we were growing up in the show? Roger Collins' behavior is defensive because he's scared shitless. He's scared because he knows shit goes on at Collinwood, and but he didn't want to admit it. Lost family. Liz just so stuffed up and down. She's not going to talk about it. But Roger is scared. So what happens in that episode is that Roger comes out, what is going on, blah, blah. And he comes face to face with his greatest fear, which is a freaking ghost, an ancestor who is an ancestor. And then they switch. Immediately, they're getting ready to leave. And that whole, there's no ending of any episode in those 5 years like that episode ends, where the camera is to empty Collinwood going up the stairs, and there is David Selby laughing and talking. It still scares the shit out of me. Maybe because I grew up in this, but that's some scary shit. So that still makes a huge impression. And then, of course, the last one, tough. I did runners up, but for time's sake, and I want to hog everything. The last episode would be, of course, and Patrick, we've talked about this, is episode 1198, because there's so much that happens in that. You have the death of how Judith Zachary dies. You have the death of Angelique, which is, could the writers have at least given us her 30 seconds of living, so her and Bart, that's the one time, Patrick, where I think that the writers, I'm on the cusp of saying it, disrespected the audience. Why couldn't have you given the audience that? Why? It would have been so simple, but it is what it is. So you have that. You have, I love when they threw Trask into parallel time, which was a favorite. Did die. And then how they get back, and that whole conversation. Julia's so happy to be back. She says, "It's so good to see you." What, Elizabeth? Well, thank you, Julia. It's been a cozy winter. Blah, blah, blah. And we have to go to the historical center because Roger's giving a speech. He's already there. And just on a personal note, I remember when I wasn't even 8 years old yet. And I was going, wow, they're back in the present. So those are my top 5 episodes I have runners up. Cool.
I like all you guys' list. Y'all did a good job. My lists are very crazy. My number 5 is the werewolf jumping through the window of the blue whale. And let me tell you why. Number 1, it's such a cool effect. Number 2, it reminds me of the Shockmaster jumping through the wall in WCW. The only difference is the Shockmaster falls on his ass, and you hear the British Bulldog. He fell on his ass. He fell on his fucking ass. And then Ric Flair, who's mic'd up, he goes, Jesus Christ. But with this, no one falls on their ass. Thank God, because we have a really great stunt man. He jumps through the window. It's so cool. It's just it's something you don't expect to see happen, especially in Dark Shadows or on television itself. But the fact that the werewolf jumps through a glass window, I'm all for it. So that's what it reminded me of. My number 4, how could I not include this? Because it's so good, and it's my favorite arc. The beginning of the 1995 arc, which is in a sense the beginning of the Judah Zachary arc. It's so criminally good. I'll give you I'll give you the person of why it's not higher, because me and Patrick have been covering 1841. But with 1995, I really love the entire arc. It's such a George A. Romero feel, and no, George A. Romero isn't doing Dark Shadows, but it feels like he is. And Doom is imminent and Doom is here at the same time. And that's what Romero and Carpenter both did greatly throughout their films. And that's what it feels like. My number 3 isn't an episode, it's a person, it's an actress. Mary Cooper, 1841, Josette. I mean, by God, Patrick and I have touched upon this. I mean, what a performance. I mean, she's not in a ton of episodes, but the episode she's in, by God, does she stand out. I mean, when you know the history of Josette, like we all do, that here's this character in the timeline we know and love, the regular timeline, she's a ghost. You meet her as a ghost, and yeah, you do meet the physical person. You meet Kathleen Lee Scott as Josette in the past, but you don't get to see her age because she dies, and nothing changes. Time we have a moment where here's this woman who's alive and well, and she's older. She's middle aged, and we get to see it. And they cast an actress like Mary Cooper to sell it, and she does a hell of a job. So my number 3 is a person. My number 2, how can I not have one of my favorite moments of all time? Desmond Collins arrives with the head of Judah Zachary in the case. It's like, I keep thinking about that, man. That would be a cool gift for my wife. No, but
Joel, that's terrible.
No, I'm kidding. But I really love Desmond Collins' swagger in the episode. He's so happy that he got this gift for his brother. And it's such a cool scene by Carla that you're like smiling through it. It's so cool and so hip at the same time. It's one of my favorite episodes to go back and watch repeatedly, because I'm like, this dude is literally happy that he brought a thing of the occult home. Of this head, a severed head. This tops the severed hand of Count Patove. Love Count Patove. And my number 1, I'll always leave this at my number 1 because I'm a sentimental sucker, is the arrival of Victoria Winters, Alexander Molchialis' character. 2 Dark Shadows. That's my daughter.
I feel the
So that's my number 1. What do you guys think? What's you guys' thoughts on all your lists?
These are great episodes.
Yeah.
These are 20 episodes I want to sit down and watch again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I am going to watch this podcast and I'm going to write down the episodes that you guys mentioned, and I want to rewatch them.
I'm gonna
Sure.
send you guys. I'm gonna send you guys the video of the Shockmaster jumping through the wall.
Yeah.
So you can get the impression of why I'm laughing, and then you could go watch the werewolf jump through the window and go, "Oh, okay,"
Yeah.
because I'm evil. But it's really cool that I love all you guys' episodes. I love every single one of them, and I think an honorable mention I'll give one is the arrival of Finn Ben Givens, who's going to be Count Patofe. My God, the way they did that, the way they wrote that character was genius, and the way Tara David portrayed it. If you guys want to give some honorable mentions, please do.
Oh gosh, there's so many. The one that occurs to me, and then I have a special reading to share later. But the one that occurs to me, and I don't have the episode number, so, is Gabriel's confession to Daniel about the fact that he can walk, and that he was so desperate for his father's love, and that he always had. And Christopher Pennock is just so good. You want to know my favorite Dark Shadows episode? It's whatever the last Pennock episode was I watched.
Yeah.
That guy. So I like that.
Susie, is there an honorable mention you have?
Gosh, I have to think about that. Yeah, let me think about that for a minute. What do you think, Don?
Well, before I say anything, Joe, I have a tech. But that hear you guys, but I can't facial gestures, and I'm not hear you guys. I have a few. Joel, can I run through them?
Could you come closer to your microphone? I'm having trouble hearing you.
I'll just bring it up.
Oh, that did it.
Okay. There you go.
I have I have 5, but I'm gonna make them really quick. So mine is episode 90, and the only reason why is because we have 1966 David who could hear Diablo, and there's a line in there, and I'm gonna tell Patrick breaking down shows, plays. You describe what the show's about in one sentence. And David Collins says the one sentence that, to me, describes the entire show of Dark Shadows when he turns to Matthew Morgan and says, "In this house, anything." That's why that's a runner-up. Episode 170, that's the first seance camera work. It's very Hitchcockian where they do music. Episode 179, that's when Joe and boyfriend, they opened the coffin of Loris, and episode 646, which I call "This Shit's Getting Real" episode. That's the episode have Beth appearing out of the shadows next to Quentin. Kids in the part of there, and it goes right. It's the path, and then they have this argument that Liz and Roger having down in the foyer. It's like the present, and wow. And that's the episode where they pick apart the bones of whoever that was up there and put it in the toy box and bury it, which that's why that's the shit. This shit's getting real episode.
Yeah.
Up real quick. Just talked about where the costumes were great. Keith Prentice looks so dashingly handsome, and there is Nancy Barrett coming. that doorway in the most beautiful dress she ever wore. So, and I go, dang, she's all grown up. She was and
Yeah.
that and America, we're talking the England under the Stuarts, 1680. That was a great point you guys made. So those are my runners up. I hope I didn't.
No.
I do have an honorable mention, and I've said this before in the past. My honorable mention is going to go to Robert Colbert and the music, because that was, I mean, I watch these episodes and the music just fits in so freaking perfectly. It's so, I mean, I don't even have the words for it. Sometimes I'll be sitting there and I'll just feel like chills just hearing it in the background. And it isn't just like at the Blue Whale. I mean, it's during the seances and it's during these very intense and, you know, scary moments, hearing the music. I mean, it's just so beautiful and it's so perfect for the show. That's my honorable mention for sure.
Some honorable mentions too is I think it's 363 is the episode where Dr. Julia Hoffman hears she's in the mausoleum. She hears a woman weeping, and then she hears a wicked woman laughing. And in a sense, that's the introduction of Angela, like before we see her. Yeah. It's not Laura Parker's legendary laugh. I don't think she's cast yet at that point. But it's really, really good, and it's so creepy. And speaking of Julie Hoffman, the fact that they literally, Dark Shadows in every way does a sex change for a character. They mentioned Dr. Hoffman as a man, and literally we get the next time we hear about Dr. Hoffman, it's Dr. Julia Hoffman, and the character's now a woman, and we get the casting of Grayson Hall, which is excellent. I mean, it's one of the biggest moments of Dark Shadows post Barnabas, you know. And another one is Quentin finding out he had a son post death, you know, him losing his son.
Holy cow. Boy, does one world end and another world begin in that one?
Yeah, really. It's just so heartbreaking, and just it like Dark Shadows was always great at gut punching its audience. And you know what you did? You stood up and said, "Hit me again!" And because it was just that good.
Yeah.
I agree. It's just fantastic choices. And I was thinking about that Quentin episode earlier. Somebody mentioned a Quentin episode, and I thought, is this going to be it? And it was another good one. Yeah. But I got that one, and you know, Selby is so good. That's the end of the sentence, you know. But he can play such the party animal, and then turn around and be a real man, you know. And we realize the whole point, you know, the whole point of Barnabas is a man learning to be a god and to have the powers of this immortal time traveling God. There he is again. But you know, Quentin's story is about a boy learning to become a man, you know, with a cat in his lap.
Lincoln's trying to get his name in the credits again. We might have to put him in there.
Yeah.
Cute cat. Yeah, it's so many things too, because we've been with Quentin for a while with 1897 when we see this episode. Sorry about that. But
I felt the clothes on that one.
Yeah.
I can react.
So
go on, Jewel.
Yeah, and the fact that you have this moment where you find out you knew he's a dad, and he finds it out. When he finds it out and he finds out he lost his son, you heard of a lost child, you're thinking, they're not going to kill another kid, are they? Yeah, they are. And this one is just as heartbreaking, if not more, than Sarah. and it's all too real.
There's another, I think it's episode 546, 545, 546, I think. It's the episode where Sarah finally appears to Barnabas.
Yeah.
And
God.
it really, I came across that after I finished Daybook Unbound, but before it was out. And so I got in some stuff about it, and then I got in more because for me, that's a Rosetta Stone for Barnabas, but the whole series, you know, you must be good. And there is an incredibly maudlin moment that had I written this show, I would have had the bad taste to include. And it would have been, Barnabas would have been unable to not go to Angelique's burial in 1840. Because Stokes, I think, wants him to go because Stokes knows that if he goes to the funeral, he's not coming back.
Yeah.
That's just going to be it. And that Barnabas is there, and there's like nobody there. You know, there's a priest or something, and, you know, he goes away, and family's too busy enjoying themselves to, you know, bother with Barnabas's wife. And, you know, Barnabas can't move. And you just see the camera sort of go down to his hand on the cane, and you just see Sarah's hand on top of his.
Mm.
And she finally reappeared. She said, "I'll come back when you are good." And it's like, God damn it. You did. You did. And the next shot is Barnabas coming back into the house and saying, okay, let's go back home.
Yeah. That'd have been cool.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's way too maudlin. It's way too obvious, but I miss it. I feel like that's just a moment that you can only get away with in the medium of melodrama and soaps and things like that.
Patrick, you talked about this before. Do you think like Barnabas grabs the I Ching wands and goes back to 1795 and just grabs Angelique and says, "Let's go, let's run away together"?
I think he tries. I think she's really wigged out. I think he can certainly project himself back into his body, and she's expecting him to vow revenge and everything else. And he says, "I'm sorry. You're not going to understand what I'm doing now. I'm not the same guy. And believe it or not, you're not the same woman. And we got to get out of here."
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything anybody wants to add before we get on out of here?
Yeah, Joe, I want to mention an episode. Patrick, this is
Do you speak up? We're sorry.
this is one of the best moments acting and directing, and that is, do you remember the episode where baby Lenore, you know, Quentin's daughter was dying, and Jenny came back from the dead, and
She's sane.
and was singing the lullaby, and even Grayson Hall as Magda, the look on her face, and the look on Selby's face, and how beautiful Jenny was, and how it's, and I think so. What could have been? It was so insanely good. That scene just sticks with me.
Yeah. It does. It sticks with you.
I got a thing, Jewel, and but I had a shot and it was cleared up. But also, I did this writing thing, and I talked about this a little while ago in 2013, and it was the year after I did the watch through, and I did the second thing called Collins Chronicles, and because it's pursuant to 1198, which Don mentioned. With your indulgence, I'd like to share it because I wrote these responses in character as these different characters. I don't know if any of you guys have read any of these, but I gotta be Lucy and storm onto the stage at the Tropicana one more time because I think this is actually really good, and it's the sort of thing that just doesn't really have an audience because it's not legal to publish because it's all copywritten material. But I say it for no problem at all. So may I? This is Barnes's diary entry when he gets back to 1840. Now, every time Angelique showed up, he begins the entry with, "I knew I'd never see her again." And then, of course, she's back. So this one starts with, I know that I will never see her again. The House of Trask finally stands in triumph. Since 1795, they have sought to eradicate the legacy of witchcraft in Collinsport. In 1796, they added a blood vendetta against me to their crusade. Mr. Lamar Trask succeeded in both. Today, he murdered Angelique Bouchard. In doing so, he has inflicted a wound upon me that shall never heal. He ended her with a common pistol and then ran. Her lips tasted of honey and rain, and she was dead in my arms when I finally told her I loved her. Desperately, I seized at the one pleasure retained for me by life, crushing the throat of Lamar Trask. As he staggered into the impenetrable world of parallel time, I was denied even that. The great house of Collinwood exacted vengeance for me, and I am beset with a conflict of pique and flattery. When she saw me, Julia tried to be a comfort. The results were not successful, but I was moved by her intentions. I was mourning a love that was not her. But Julia found sympathy for me anyway. Was the denial of my love causing her suffering equal to my own? No. Respectfully, Julia, no. These centuries have taught me many things, and one fact stands above all others. While my capacity for joy has always been limited, my capacity for grief is infinite. We returned home. We changed clothes. We met Elizabeth. I'm being driven to the opening of the new Collinsport Historical Society, where Roger is giving a speech. Elliot and Elizabeth are having a lively chat in the seat before me, and Julia's laughing with them, only occasionally glancing at me and then looking downward in shame. It is a moderated shame, however, for I have led her to believe that I, as always, have recovered. I shall sit at attention as Roger speaks. I will hold my program politely. My mind and heart will be centuries away. I have saved the Collins family, and I have lost the only thing that has ever made me purely happy. But had I never felt it at all, I would not be feeling what I am now. We're parking. Takes from me. Showing otherwise would quietly harm the Collins family yet again. So I will do what humans always do, and what I always do. I shall pretend.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Love it.
Thank you.
Bravo, sir.
I think I got his voice pretty well by that point.
Really, really good, Patrick. I love it.
Thank you.
Susie, is there anything you want to add before we go?
Just thank you guys so much for doing this. This has been so much fun. And Patrick, I'm so glad that we were doing this together tonight. It's really, really, really cool. I love listening to you guys talk. Sorry, I think the Lakers are playing. If you hear screaming. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
There's nothing wrong with celebration. At all. Don, is there anything you want to add before we go?
No, well, just thank you for having the three of us on. You had me on by myself.
Thank you.
And now with Patrick, it's really been fantastic tonight.
Thank you.
It's always fun to bring people together and have a blast. That's what we're here for. That's what this channel's here for. But first of all, thank you all. Thank you all so much. Patrick, Susie, and Dawn. You guys gave me your time tonight, and thank you so much. I appreciate it. Spoiler alert, the Shockmaster is wearing a Stormtrooper helmet in the video. Anyway, we're going to put Lincoln's name in the video at the end because we have to. Patrick, have a good night, buddy. Link to the Dark Shadows Daybook on Bell will be in the description box. Go follow Patrick McCray on Twitter. Go follow Don Schmidt on Twitter. Go follow Susie on Twitter. Everybody have a great night and have a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.